When you think of loyalty, family, and unbreakable brotherhood, OTF was supposed to be the definition of it. Only the family wasn't just a name, it was a code, a lifestyle, a blood oath that came straight from the trenches of Chicago. But behind that loyalty, there were shadows no one saw. Hidden deals, silent moves, and whispers that would one day shake the empire from the inside. After King Von's tragic death, the streets went quiet, but not for peace. It was the silence before storm. The people closest to him began changing. The energy around OTF shifted, and fans could feel it. Who was real? Who was faking it? And who was playing both sides just to stay alive or stay rich? The cracks in the brotherhood started to show, and with them came betrayal, greed, and power plays that would turn brothers into rivals. Lil Durk, the face of OTF, suddenly stood at a crossroads. Every move he made was under the microscope. Every post, every lyric, every silence. Rumors started swirling. Did success cost him the loyalty that built his name? Some said the fame changed everything. Others believed it was survival. Then the world Durk came from, trust is a luxury no one can afford for long. The deeper you look, the more twisted it gets. Old friends becoming strangers. New enemies disguised as allies. The very name, only the family, started to sound like a question instead of a promise. What really happened behind the scenes? Who turned on who? And did King Von's death set off a chain reaction that no one in OTF could stop? This is not just a story about music. It's about power, betrayal, and the price of staying on top in a world where loyalty has an expiration date. Inside OTF, nothing is as it seems. Every handshake, welcome to the inside of OTF, where family is everything until it isn't. Loyalty, power, betrayal. 3 words that built OTF, and 3 words that almost tore it apart. When people heard only the family, they thought of unity, of real brotherhood, of men who die for each other before ever switching sides. But what happens when that loyalty starts to fade? When power changes people, and the same love that built a family becomes the reason it breaks? Lil Durk's dream was never small. He wanted more than fame. He wanted to lift his people out of the mud, to turn pain into something bigger. From the rough streets of Englewood to the biggest stages in hip-hop, Durk carried that mission on his back. But as OTF grew, so did the shadows inside it. Because the higher you rise, the more you start to see who's really climbing with you, and who's just waiting for you to fall. King Von wasn't just another artist in OTF. He was the energy that kept the name alive. Every verse he wrote, every story he told, came from the raw truth of Chicago's streets. He didn't just rap about pain, he lived it. To Durk, Von wasn't just a signing, he was family. Together, they were unstoppable. The chemistry was real. The streets believed in them. OTF wasn't just a crew anymore. It was an empire in motion. But fame moves fast. And when fame mixes with the streets, it becomes something dangerous. On November 6th, 2020, everything changed. Outside an Atlanta nightclub, gunfire broke the silence. And in seconds, King Von was gone. The news hit the world like an earthquake. To fans, it was shocking. But for OTF, it was a death that changed everything from the inside out. After that night, everything got quiet. Durk disappeared from the spotlight for a moment. Not because he wanted to, but because he had to. The pain was too real. The man who once smiled through the chaos now had nothing left to say. The fans wanted answers. The media wanted headlines. But Durk gave them silence. And that silence said more than any interview ever could. Behind closed doors, OTF was shifting. Grief has a strange way of changing people. Some drift away, some get closer, and some start thinking about themselves first. The same circle that once felt unbreakable suddenly started to feel cold. People moved differently. Eyes started watching each other instead of watching out for each other. That's where the betrayal started to grow, quietly, in the shadows. The love that once connected everyone now carried weight. There were whispers about who was really loyal, who was chasing clout, and who might have seen Von's death as a door opening for their own fame. It sounds dark, but in the music world, especially the street side of it. That kind of darkness is real. Durk stayed focused on the music, but even in his lyrics, you could hear it. Pain, loss, anger, confusion. His tone was sharper, his eyes colder. He was moving with purpose now, but the warmth was gone. Rumors started spreading. Is OTF still united? Is Durk the last one holding it together? Are they even family anymore? The brotherhood that once stood like armor was cracking. Some members started their own paths, forming smaller cliques, chasing different sounds, different goals. The loyalty that built OTF started to feel like an illusion. And through it all, Durk said nothing. No statements, no public breakdowns. Just music, but silence is powerful. Sometimes it speaks louder than words. People forget this isn't just rap for these men. It's survival. Every friendship, every feature, every decision is life or death in their world. OTF wasn't just a label. It was a code. But codes only work when everyone follows them. And inside OTF, that time passed and OTF kept winning. More hits, more artists, more money. But something about the energy was different. Those who'd been there since the beginning could feel it. The soul of OTF was missing. Von's presence was gone, and without him, everything felt hollow. Durk was still the leader, still the face, but his mission had changed. He wasn't just fighting for fame anymore. He was fighting to protect what was left. Some say he became colder. Others say he became smarter. Maybe both are true. When you lose the people you love, you don't stay the same. You evolve or you fall apart. And Lil Durk evolved. He learned to move in silence, to trust no one fully, and to build power while the world watched for his downfall. But no matter how far he went, the whispers didn't stop. Because once betrayal enters the circle, it never really leaves. It hides, waiting for the next moment to strike. Inside OTF, loyalty was no longer a given, it was a gamble. And not everyone was ready to bet their life on it. What started as a brotherhood had turned into a battlefield of ambition, secrets, and silent revenge. And the deeper you go inside OTF, the clearer it becomes. Not everyone who smiles with you is really family. After Von's death, the silence around OTF wasn't peace, it was pressure. The world expected answers, the streets demanded revenge, and Durk stood at the center of it all. Every move he made was watched, every lyric he dropped was dissected. Some wanted blood, some wanted leadership. But Durk wasn't speaking for anyone. He was trying to survive for himself. In the months that followed, everything about OTF began to shift. New faces started showing up in videos, in studios, on stages. The original circle, the ones who built the name, started fading into the background. To outsiders, it looked like growth. But those behind the scenes, power was changing hands. People who used to move as one started moving separately. The same family that used to fight for each other was now competing for spotlight and control. OTF had become bigger than the block it was born from. And that's when the cracks started to spread. Von's loss had created a power vacuum. He was more than an artist. He was a voice that kept the streets connected to the movement. Without him, the emotional glue was gone. Some wanted to keep things together. Others wanted to lead. And some wanted to leave. That's how betrayal starts. Not with hate, but with ambition. Durk had to adapt. He started watching people more carefully, moving with fewer friends and more focus. The boy from Chicago who once trusted everyone around him had now learned that even brothers can switch when money gets involved. The smiles got faker. The loyalty got thinner. The music stayed strong. That's the one thing OTF never lost. Every track Durk dropped hit harder, darker, more personal. He wasn't just making songs anymore. He was sending messages. Sometimes to fans, sometimes to enemies, and sometimes to the very people standing next to him. Still, there were names whispered in the streets. People said some members were distancing themselves. Others were secretly plotting deals outside of OTF. Some wanted fame without the family. Others wanted credit for the success they never earned. And through it all, Durk stayed silent, letting time expose who was real. But the streets remember everything. They remember who stood tall and who disappeared when things got dark. They remember who cried for Von and who just posted a picture for likes. That's how the myth of OTF started to split into two stories. The official one you see online, and the hidden one that only insiders whisper about. On one side were the loyal ones, those who still saw OTF as blood. On the other side were the opportunists, the ones who saw OTF as a brand, a way out, a ticket. Durk was stuck in the middle, trying to protect both the legacy and the business. But that's the hardest part of leadership. When family and fame collide, someone always gets left behind. It wasn't just internal drama either. Outside pressure made things worse. Legal cases, social media rumors, industry politics, all eyes were on Durk. He couldn't make one wrong move. Every post, every lyric, every photo became evidence for or against him. The world was watching OTF, waiting to see if the family would crumble. And in a way, it did. Not all at once, but slowly, piece by piece. The energy changed. The laughter faded. Studio sessions turned tense. Conversations got shorter. People stopped calling. It wasn't open war, but it was quiet distance. And in that silence, loyalty started to die. Durk knew it too. You could hear it in his verses. The paranoia, the disappointment, the pain of watching something he built with love turn cold in his hands. He started surrounding himself with fewer people, relying on trust only where it was earned. The boy who once believed in only the family was now learning that sometimes family is the first to hurt you. Still, Durk didn't quit. He turned that pain into purpose. Every betrayal became fuel. Every fake smile became motivation. He understood the cost of success now. That fame doesn't just bring money, it brings masks. And inside OTF, everyone was wearing one. The betrayal wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It was quiet, hidden behind fake love, secret plans, and silent greed. People didn't stab each other in the back anymore. They smiled while doing it. By the time the world realized what was happening, OTF wasn't the same family it once was. It had grown, evolved, hardened. Some of the original love was gone, replaced by strategy and survival. Durk had turned into something else too. Not just a rapper, but a general, moving like a man who'd seen too much to ever go back. The empire still stood. The hits kept coming. But if you look close enough, you could still see the cracks. The ones King Von's death had left behind, the ones money and fame could never fix. Because once loyalty breaks, it never really heals. It just hides behind new songs, new faces, and new deals. And inside OTF, everyone knew one truth. The family may still exist, but the bond that made it only the family was long gone. By the time the world started to move on from Von's death, Lil Durk had already changed. The pain had turned him sharper, colder, less of a friend, more of a strategist. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was rebuilding. But this time, he wasn't rebuilding OTF for loyalty. He was building it for control. The streets talk, and Durk listens. He knew exactly what people were saying, that OTF wasn't the same, that the brotherhood was fading, that power had replaced love. And maybe, deep down, he knew they were right. Because every empire that's born from struggle eventually faces a choice. Protect your people or protect your power. Durk chose both, but that came with consequences. He started tightening the circle. Fewer people in the studio. Fewer people on the stage. Only the trusted ones were allowed in. The rest were left outside, watching from a distance, wondering if they'd been cut off or if they'd cut themselves out. The OTF brand was still shining, but inside, it was becoming a chessboard. Every move mattered. Every piece was either an ally or a threat. Behind the scenes, quiet power shifts were happening. Some artists under the OTF banner started moving independently, chasing deals, collaborations that didn't make sense, missing faces in group photos, tension disguised as business. The word family started sounding like a slogan. The truth was more complicated. Von's absence left a hole that no one could fill. He was the balance, the raw edge that kept OTF grounded in its roots. Without him, the energy was off. People try to replace it, but you can't recreate authenticity. You can't manufacture real love. Durk, on the other hand, wasn't trying to replace Von. He was trying to honor him. But the pain of that loss made him move differently. He became more private, more protective, more ruthless. When betrayal touches you once, you start expecting it from everyone. That's when the tone of OTF's music began to shift. The pain turned into warning. The loyalty talk turned into lessons. It wasn't only the family anymore, it was trust no one. You could feel it in every verse, every bar. Durk was talking to someone specific, even if he never said the name. Still, the money kept flowing. OTF's name kept rising. Labels wanted to sign under the banner. New artists dreamed of joining the family. But behind all that success, the energy was tense. The original members who had been there from the start began to fade from the spotlight. Some drifted quietly, others left loudly. And every departure left fans asking the same question. What's really going on inside OTF? It wasn't just betrayal, it was evolution. Durk wasn't the same kid from the streets anymore. He was a global artist now, dealing with fame, money, pressure, and danger on every side. You can't stay the same when your life turns into a target. You have to grow harder to stay alive. But growth comes with sacrifices. Relationships that once felt unbreakable began to dissolve. Brothers turned into strangers. The line between business and brotherhood blurred completely. For some, OTF was still a dream. For others, it had become a burden. Durk didn't show emotion publicly. No rants, no breakdowns. Just cold focus. The kind that comes from understanding one painful truth. Everyone's loyal until they get what they want. After that, they change. He used to say, only the family, like it was a prayer. Now, it sounded more like a reminder, a warning to himself that not everyone deserves that title. The betrayal wasn't explosive. It was slow, silent, and smart. People didn't argue. They just started fading. One day, they're OTF forever. The next day, they're gone, chasing something else. That's how the streets work. No one says goodbye. They just stop showing up. Still, through all the chaos, Durk stayed standing. Maybe not with the same people, but with the same vision. He knew what the streets expected from him. Leadership. And leadership isn't about keeping everyone happy. It's about keeping the ship alive, even when half the crew jumps overboard. That's the reality of power. It isolates you. It turns you into something else. Not cruel, but cautious. Durk had learned that lesson the hard way. The same love that built OTF had now become the thing he feared most. Because love demands trust, and trust had already gotten too many people killed. So he built a new OTF, one based on strategy, not emotion. Contracts instead of handshakes. Loyalty tested by time, not words. To outsiders, OTF looked untouchable. But those who really knew the story understood. Inside that empire was a man still haunted by the ghost of King Vaughn and the sound of loyalty breaking behind closed doors. Because that's the truth about families like OTF. They don't fall apart in public. They die quietly, one secret at a time. By 2022, Lil Durk wasn't just a rapper anymore. He was an institution. His name carried weight in every corner of the game. The pain, the loss, the betrayal, all of it had shaped him into something different. The quiet kid from Englewood had turned into the face of survival. Every scar became a symbol. Every hit a reminder that he was still here when so many weren't. But success doesn't erase the past. It only makes it louder. The ghosts of OTF's history were still whispering. Every time Durk dropped a verse about loyalty, fans started decoding it like it was a secret message. Every time someone disappeared from the crew, the internet went wild with theories. The public saw fame, but behind the scenes, it was still chaos, silent power struggles, quiet resentment, and the unspoken truth that not everyone was on the same mission anymore. The more OTF grew, the less it felt like family, and the more it looked like an empire. And empires don't run on love, they run on control. Durk had learned that the hard way. He no longer trusted easily. Every deal was double-checked, every word was measured. The brother who once moved on emotion now moved on calculation. It wasn't paranoia, it was protection. He'd lost too much to gamble again. The betrayal, the losses, the snakes pretending to be loyal. They had all taught him that being soft was a death sentence. Now, he played the long game. Quiet moves, smart investments, and a wall between his real life and the public image. The fans called it growth. The streets called it distance. But for Durk, it was survival. Still, no matter how high he climbed, the weight of OTF's past followed him. The streets never forget, and neither did he. Every time he performed, every time he mentioned Vaughn, you could see it, the pain, the loyalty, the guilt. It wasn't just about music anymore. It was about legacy. He knew the world would never stop comparing the before Vaughn and after Vaughn versions of OTF. And maybe that's why he worked harder than ever, to make sure Vaughn's name lived on through him. But that mission came with pressure. Everyone expected Durk to carry OTF like a soldier carrying a fallen brother's flag. But even soldiers get tired. Even kings break behind a crown. The tension wasn't just inside the crew anymore. Outside forces were circling. Industry politics, rival camps, even law enforcement. Everyone wanted a piece of the OTF story. Every lyric could be twisted. Every move turned into a headline. The same fame that lifted them up now kept them under a microscope. That's when Durk started moving different, almost invisible. No random handouts, no unnecessary drama. The same man who once lived in the chaos now controlled it from a distance. The OTF leader wasn't out there proving who he was. He was proving who he'd become. But power changes everything. And power always attracts envy. Some old names tried to come back. Others tried to discredit the movement. Fake stories spread online. Lies, half-truths, people chasing clicks off Durk's pain. But through it all, he stayed silent. Because silence hurts louder than arguments. Silence makes people wonder. And Durk had learned to let mystery do the talking. Inside OTF, loyalty was no longer measured by words. It was measured by actions, by who stayed when things got rough, by who showed up when it mattered. Some stood tall, others faded out. That's the natural order of success. The higher you rise, the more you lose along the way. Still, OTF didn't die. It evolved. The name became bigger than any single person. The next generation of artists looked up to Durk not as a friend, but as a blueprint. To them, he wasn't just a rapper. He was proof that you could come from the trenches and still turn your pain into power. But deep inside, Durk knew the truth. That kind of power comes with a price. Every win came with another loss. Every headline name left behind. He learned that sometimes being a leader means walking alone. The world saw success. The fans saw glory. But behind closed doors, Durk was still fighting battles no one knew about. Personal, emotional, and silent. The same loyalty that built his empire had also scarred him forever. And maybe that's what makes OTF's story so powerful. It's not about perfection. It's about survival. It's about how a dream built on love can turn into a war for control. It's about how family can become both your weapon and your weakness. Even now, when you look at OTF, you can feel it. That energy of something real, something raw, something that refuses to die even when everything around it falls apart. Durk turned his pain into a kingdom. But even kings bleed behind the crown. Time has a strange way of revealing truth. The names, the rumors, the silent wars, they all fade with time. But the story of OTF? That one never goes quiet. After everything, the deaths, the losses, the headlines, one thing became clear. You can't destroy what's built on purpose. OTF wasn't just a label or a gang or a trend. It was a code born from pain, written in loyalty, and tested through betrayal. Every chapter of this story has been written in real time. No scripts, no filters, just raw life and the price of survival. Lil Durk understood that. He wasn't chasing validation anymore. He was chasing peace. The fame, the awards, the numbers, none of that could fill the holes left behind. When he looked around, the room was quieter, emptier, colder. The ones who started with him weren't all standing beside him anymore. But that's how empires are built. Not by who stays the longest, but by who stands the strongest when everything else falls apart. By 2023, Durk had turned all the pain into power. He started moving like a man who had already lost everything once and refused to lose it again. His music hit deeper. His words carried weight. There was a new calm in his chaos, a silent message that said, "I made it, but I never forgot where I came from." He began protecting OTF like a legacy, not a lifestyle. The next generation of artists looked up to him, not because of his street rep, but because he showed them it's possible to rise, evolve, and still stay real. The message had changed, but the mission stayed the same. Protect the name, protect the loyalty, protect the family. Still, deep down, he knew OTF would never be the same. You can rebuild the brand, but you can't replace the bond. King Von's name still echoed in every concert, every verse, every moment of silence between songs. It wasn't about nostalgia, it was about respect. The kind that can't be bought, only earned through pain and time. Durk's silence became his loudest weapon. He didn't argue with the internet, didn't respond to every rumor, didn't entertain the noise. He let success talk, because in the end, that's the only language people truly understand. But inside the walls of OTF, everyone could feel it, the shift. The foundation was no longer fear, it was focus. Loyalty wasn't about hanging out every day, it was about showing up when it mattered. And those who didn't understand that were already gone. In a world where loyalty fades faster than fame, OTF became a reminder that survival has a cost. And that cost is everything you love. When you look at Lil Durk now, you don't just see an artist, you see a man who carried an entire generation's pain on his back and still stood tall. The betrayals, the headlines, the deaths, they didn't break him, they built him. They forced him to evolve from a rapper into a symbol of endurance. And that's what this story is really about. Not just OTF, not just Von, not just Durk, but about how loyalty, power, and pain mix in the world of fame, and how few can survive that storm without losing themselves. But if you listen closely, you can still hear it. The echo of the name that started it all. Only the family. And for the streets, for the fans, for the culture, that name still means something. Because OTF isn't gone. It just grew up. Durk turned a tragedy into a legacy. And that legacy lives far beyond the music. It lives in every artist who refuses to quit, in every kid chasing a dream from the dirt, and in every fan who believes that loyalty, no matter how broken, still has meaning. And that's why we told this story. Because here at Rap Shock, we don't just report hip-hop. We uncover the truth behind it, the pain behind the plaques, the loyalty behind the lyrics, the real stories the headlines forget. From the rise of King Von to the rebirth of OTF, this has been a journey through betrayal, power, and redemption. The kind of story only hip-hop could write. This isn't just entertainment. This is history. This is survival. This is the untold truth, straight from the trenches to your screen. Only on Rap Shock. If you've made it this far, you already know this wasn't just another story. This was the truth behind the name. OTF's rise, fall, and survival prove one thing. Loyalty in this game comes with a price. And at Rap Shock, we bring you those raw, unfiltered stories the industry won't tell. From betrayal in the trenches to power moves behind closed doors. So if you live for real hip-hop history, if you want to understand the pain behind the fame and the streets behind the success, this is your home. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and join the Rap Shock movement, where every drop hits harder, every truth cuts deeper, and every story reminds you why hip-hop still matters. Stay real. Stay locked in. This is Rap Shock.